Well, welcome back. And this time, I want to talk a little bit about IDEs. Now, you're going to possibly ask, what is an IDE and which one do I choose? And that is what I want to focus on in this little lesson. Just some things to consider that even if you are very comfortable where you're at, maybe it's time to take another look. So first off, an IDE is an integrated development environment. Think of this as a dashboard for your coding task. This is what you're going to fire up when you write code. Now, it could be a very simple editor. However, an IDE is going to bring you so many more features, you will find yourself, if you're using it properly, far more productive. It is going to be a lot faster to get things done. Now, these functions, these features that typically are included in an IDE include things like writing code, because that's the most important thing maybe we do. Well, writing good code, I guess, but most of our time is spent, hopefully, writing code. So you're probably going to have a good editor. You may have some sort of syntax highlighting and completion and some things like that, which can help you very quickly understand your code and even can show you some best practices. Version control, because we should all be using it. So most IDEs, if not all of them, I don't know when I've last seen one that doesn't have some sort of a version control integration built into it. Testing and debugging. So a lot of the modern IDEs are going to allow you to either in a container type environment or to your, maybe your local machine or whatever your development environment is, deploy code out, do some testing, debugging, which is invaluable. I highly recommend, no matter what you're dealing with, understand what the debugging tools are that are available and how to use them. And IDEs can sometimes make it easier to transition, we'll say, from one language to another, because you may have an IDE that while it's basically a generic IDE, it has language specific features, but it also is built in a way that you can use multiple languages. For example, maybe a C# and Java. And if you write in those a lot, particularly if you have to go back and forth, it can be a little bit confusing. And it's nice to have an environment that just feels comfortable or the same as you're bouncing back and forth. Now, also one of the things we do a lot is, and usually if you've got bigger applications, you're going to be browsing the code, searching for certain classes or functions or that line of code that you need to change. And so IDEs are going to have searching and browsing capabilities. Search is going to be typical. Normally you're going to see it. It's going to be search in the file, search all files, and then maybe in the directory or in your project. And then browsing, depending on what your language is and how things work, it may be by class, it may be by file, maybe you've got some sort of a namespace or something like that. So there's some different ways that sometimes an IDE will allow you to leverage the language to search for whatever it is you're searching for. And then it's also going to allow you to do updates and organize your application, your project. So if you're in something that needs to be built or needs to connect to various libraries, maybe use like a Maven or something like that, or if you're using a package tool like like React, Node's got one, Python has one, just about everybody has one. Every language, I think, just about has one now. So sometimes you need to have the ability to go into maybe some of those configurations and some of those setting files to make sure you get the right version or that you pick the latest version to get your updates. Now, that may seem like a lot of features, and it is. And so then that maybe begs the question, well, which one do I choose, particularly if most or all of them have most or all of those features? That's a good question, but really it comes down to you as a developer. Now, yes, sometimes this is taken out of our hands. It may be our organization, our team, our boss, something like that. There's some other consideration that causes us to pick a specific IDE. Maybe we've got a legacy project that's been built in that IDE and we really just sort of are stuck in it because it's maybe too tightly ingrained. But generally speaking, the goal is for you to be comfortable using it. You need to understand it. You need to know what it offers and how to use those features, because the more you use it, the more you leverage those things, the better the value, obviously, of the software, and then the more productive you're going to be. Now, there are some caveats. You want to look for things like a burn-in or bake-in or something like that, where you have, which does happen sometimes, you have an IDE that starts putting stuff into the code or organizing code or tweaking code in a way that the actual source code is maybe a little different. So maybe it's a little fatter, maybe it's a little slower, maybe it's got some tags and some things that it needs so that it can most effectively coordinate the coding. However, once you walk away from that IDE, that may be a problem. Or sometimes you may not be able to walk away the IDE. It may hide enough stuff or do it in a way that makes it very difficult, if not impossible, to take your code and go work with another IDE. So you want to be able, you don't get the equivalent of like a vendor lock-in. Now, much like a language, we talked about this. If you haven't done it, you can go check out on our YouTube channel, talking about selecting a language. And there's actually many other things we talk about that are similar to this. So what you want to do is shop around, look what's out there, figure out what IDEs are there, take a look at them, what looks good to you, pretty, effective, efficient, whatever it is. There may be some bells and whistles that you like. Maybe you may have like an IDE that has integrated with email or Jira or whatever your bug tracking tool is, or has a really tight integration with whatever your version control tool is. It's things like that that will be selling points to you or maybe your project. And again, if you're doing multiple projects, maybe you want an IDE that is much more flexible about which languages you can code in. Or maybe something like you want to do something that's better with, let's say, Windows development, or something's better with web application development or mobile development. So your needs are definitely going to build up some requirements, but then you want to check out some, get yourself a short list, fairly short, because it's going to take some time to invest and figure out which IDE really is going to work for you. And while you're doing that, take a look at the popularity. Make sure that this is one that's going to be around 6 months from now or a year from now. Look at how many people use it. Now, just because everybody uses it doesn't make it good. However, if nobody uses it, probably not a good sign, unless it's like open source and you're embracing that fact because you say, hey, this is a good start. I want to be able to extend it my own, write my own code, write my own IDE. Go for it. Knock yourself out. Once you've gotten your short list put together, take the IDE, each of the IDEs for a test drive. And with this, it's not just load it, run it, spend 5 minutes doing a hello world. I highly recommend you actually both things. You can do either or, but ideally create a project from scratch and import an existing project in whatever language makes sense. And take a look at how that works. Because yes, the creating part is not going to happen that often. If it has no tools to create a project, so be it. You can also always start from scratch or some sort of bootstrap or templates or something like that. Importing a project is definitely something you want to take a look at, because you probably have legacy code that you're going to want to use, that you're going to want to modify, you're going to want to maintain in this IDE you're selecting. So you want to make sure you can pull that in. It may be that you want to be able to connect to legacy version control as well. I ran into this way back, just as a slight side note example, where I had converted from CVS. I was using CVS as a version control, and actually I was also using SourceSafe, and was moving all of my legacy code to Git, and had an environment that luckily connected to all three of those, so I could go in, pull stuff out, strip out what I needed to of the of whatever the old the legacy version control tags and files and such were, and then basically then create it as a Git project and go that way. So it's very useful to do with that IDE, which is actually one that I almost never use anymore because I've moved on to a different one. You definitely want to be able to go in, you're going to write or import your, create or import your project, but like write some code, deploy stuff. Even if Hello World is probably going to be too simple, but do some little rinky-dink utility application or something that takes you maybe an hour or two, spend some time in it, and then use the debugging tools. Whatever tools are there, get comfortable with them. Get so that you understand what they are and how they're going to work for you, and honestly, if they're going to work for you. Because sometimes the way we code and the way the debuggers work is not very compatible. It's sort of square peg in a round hole. Now, it does cost time to review these IDEs. Consider, though, that it's going to be an investment. And by time, I mean, if you've got a short list of 3 to 5 IDEs, it's probably going to take you a couple of weeks to actually go through them. The last time I went through this kind of a process in depth, I think I spent about a month or a month and a half. And there weren't as many IDEs out there. This was years and years ago. There weren't near as many options as there are now. But you're also probably going to be able to eliminate some fairly quickly. So it's going to take time, but it is worth it, because when you find that IDE that matches your approach, your style, your development standards and things like that, you're going to be able to find that you can be far, far more productive. It's amazing once you start using these things, how much you can get rid of like repetitive tasks and even a lot of the mindless tasks that we sometimes get caught up in, maybe as simple as like code prettifying, prettify your code and things like that, where I can spend a lot of time deleting spaces or converting things to tabs and vice versa. And when you've got a tool that will do some of that, like do intelligent formatting and correct typos and give you code completion so you can remember what is that function call or that method call that I wanted to do, and it can suggest stuff, you'd be amazed at how much that can improve your time. Now, it can end up being a little bit of a crutch. However, it is one of those things that, when you're all in, it's worth it maybe to have a little bit of that crutch, because it's going to make you more productive. You're going to get more stuff done faster. And in a lot of times, it's going to be higher quality code as well. So, spend a little time, take a look, even if, as I started out, even if you are very comfortable in your current IDE, I recommend periodically, and by that I mean maybe once a year, maybe every other year, something like that, just take a look at what's out there, because there may be something that will be a big step up from where you're at. We tend to get sometimes a little too comfortable where we're at. We assume that features that we would love to have that don't exist are never going to exist, or some of the features we have are just always going to be clunky. And you'll find that sometimes these things get solved. And sometimes, yes, it's going to take getting an IDE and finding the right plugin. But that's one of those things that sometimes you can do that within your given IDE. There may be some plugins that are cross-platform, cross-IDE, where you'll find something you really like, and it does exist in other integrated development environments as well. So you can use that, you can leverage it, and you can be productive basically from, essentially from day one. So this is something that we want to do to become a better developers. We want to make sure that we are using the best tools available to us, and we want to periodically review. You don't want to change your tool out every 2-3 months. You don't want to be redoing everything, converting to this new IDE or its style or things like that, because there is a time lost in switching gears from the way one does it to the way another one does it. Now, you may look out and find one that's very, very similar, but that's not always the case. And that is something to consider when you move into a new one. Sometimes things like quick keys and shortcuts and stuff like that, they do have the ability for you to essentially import or utilize some other IDE's quick key or key mapping, which can be a huge benefit. Maybe confusing if somebody else sits down at your desk and starts using that IDE that's used to using maybe the default key settings. But for you, it works great. And hey, you don't need to share your development environment with somebody else that often anyways. So I hope this was helpful for you. You can check out, we've got several blog articles over the years at Developernore's site about IDEs, about varying development tools. So that may be a great way for you to start your research. But there's also a few things out there where we talk about them more as not as to recommend them, as just some of them that we have used. And you can find some more information about those checking out some of our classes. And even the free classes, you'll be able to see some of these IDEs and see if it looks interesting to you. So hope you have a great day. Thanks a lot for your time.
Well, hello, this is Rob with Developreneur, also known as Building Better Developers. Wanted to announce that we have school.developreneur.com. Feel free to check it out if you like any of this information, any of the content that we've sent, and you would like to see more. You can come out, you can enroll for free. We have free courses. We've got places for you to get better at just learning a technology, our how-tos. You can work on your business skills. We can help you with becoming a better developer, as in coding and things like that. A lot of the stuff you've seen on YouTube, we also have out at school.developreneur. We just have it in a little more of a educational format and a way for you to track your progress as you move forward becoming a better developer.